Hi everyone, my name is Zach. I'm going to be your instructor today. And today, from the woodwinds family, we are learning the bassoon. It's one of my favorite woodwind instruments. It's a double reed woodwinds instrument, which is a little different from like a saxophone or a clarinet, which uses a single reed. It uses a double reed, which looks just like this guy right here. It's kind of hard to see. But this is a double reed, meaning that it's two pieces of cane up against each other to form a small opening that you can use to make sound with. There we go. Cool. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're picking up to play bassoon is you need to put the bassoon together. It comes in quite a few pieces, so you want to make sure you do this in the right order. So I'll start it off. This is the first piece you're going to want to pull out of your bassoon case. This is called the boot or the boot joint. And this is what connects everything together. You can see it's got a large hole and also a small hole right here. And those are you're gonna put the other joints in there. So you want to start with this. I like to take this out and set it directly on the ground right in front of me. That way you don't drop it on accident when you're trying to put the other pieces in. Next, you're going to take the smaller of the two long pieces in the case. This one is called the tenor joint. This is called the tenor joint. You can see it's got this kind of odd curvature to it on there. And this curvature allows it to sit nicely up against your bass joint, which I'll show you next. So, of course, you have two sides here, the larger side and a smaller side where you see you have the cork on there. And that's what you're going to want to put down into the smaller hole on your boot joint. Let's push that all the way down in. You're going to push it all the way down in there. And you can use the curvature. I don't know if it'll go in here. You can use the curvature right here to kind of show you how to line that up. Next, you take the bass joint. So you can see this is the bigger of the two joints. If you can look on here, the bigger of the two joints. Again, put it back down on the ground. You can see there's a larger cork side here and then a smaller corked side. You're going to put the smaller corked side down. And the way I usually tell is when you look down here, you see there's this part of the key that has this little metal casing over top of it. And that part is going to be facing you. Go ahead and put that right down in there. And some bassoons will actually have a joint lock that is usually right in between the two joints there that you can put on there, and that's going to hold the joints together so they don't move around. This bassoon doesn't have one, unfortunately, so it does like to move around a little bit, but that's okay for right now. The next piece you're going to need is the bell. This is the bell. Kind of looks like the end of a didgeridoo, but doesn't quite sound like one. And the main thing with this guy is I'm going to flip the bassoon around and face you guys. There's this key right here that if you press it down here, you can see it lifts up like that. Let's see if we can see that better. It lifts up just like that. Now this key down here is going to need to go right on over top of that. So you can see I've got those two keys lined up that way when I press it down. Oh, this one's a little broken, but that's okay. When you push it down, you can see it moves this key up here. So that's the important part with that. Great. Now, the next part, and arguably the most important part, is this guy. This is the bocal or the crook. You can use either. And this guy goes right into the top of the tenor joint all the way up here on top, right? And the way I like to orient this towards myself is when it's facing towards you, the tenor joint should be directly on the right side, but both joints should be directly parallel to your body. So make sure whenever you're handling the bocal that you hold it only from this curved end right here. You don't want to handle it from down here because you could end up bending it on accident. These are very expensive, so we don't want to do that. So make sure you're holding it at the top. Go ahead and wiggle that all the way down. You should see that the cork is all the way down in there. You don't want much cork popping out. Also, there's a little spot right here. It's very hard to see. Yeah, there's this little nub guy right here. This is your whisper key. It's a very important part of playing the bassoon. We use it almost all the time. What you want to make sure is, you'll see there's a little hole. You want to make sure this key is covering that hole all the way when you press it down. And you can just kind of follow down to find which key you're pressing to do that. But it's this guy right here. And that will press that down, as you can see. So you want to make sure that that's covered all the way so you get the right sound when you blow into it. Great. Some bassoons will have one of these little guys, and this is a hand rest. From when you get into hand position, this is a rest that'll help you with holding that a little bit, especially if you have bigger hands. This will be useful to get all the way around for your hand positioning. That's really important. But for right now, I'm just going to leave that off. Now, the next thing you might notice is, well, how do you hold this thing? I mean, it's huge. It's really big. How am I supposed to hold it correctly? Well, now we're going to get to that. In your case, you should also find one of these, or something very similar to this. And this is called a seat strap. What this does is this hooks onto the very bottom of your bassoon, all the way down on the boot, so that it takes all the weight off, so that you're not holding it up, like big muscles, so you're not holding it up like that. Now, the seat strap should go on the front end of your chair, all the way on the front. That way, when you're sitting up nice and straight towards the end of your chair, it's underneath your thighs. And then you can adjust it to go lower or higher so that you're able to hook it in and have it sitting properly. And that's where we're getting to next, is posture. So when you take your bassoon, always make sure you're handling it from the boot. You don't want to handle it up here, because if you're handling it up here, there's the possibility that this guy's going to slip out and it's all going to fall apart and it's going to be a mess and expensive. So always make sure you're handling it from the boot. So what you're going to do is, you see down the very bottom here, it's very difficult to see, but I'll see if I can get it. There we go. Right here, there's a little hole down at the very bottom of the boot. And on that seat strap, there's a hook that's going to hook right in there. Just like that. The bassoon is going to want to sit off to your right side. So it's going to be, most of the weight is going to be on your right thigh. Right? So on like the top of your right thigh. I know in the video it's going to look mirrored like this. So you're going to make sure that you have it sitting on the correct side of your body. Again, that is the right side. Your right side. Okay. Very good. So now that we've got it sitting up in the right position, let's talk about our hand position. Hand position is really important and pretty challenging on bassoon, because there's not much telling you exactly where your hands need to go. And while you can't see it on this side, when you flip it over, you can see there's a ton of keys on this thing. So you're like, oh my gosh, where do I actually put my hands, right? Well, first things first. Start with your left hand. Start with your left hand. And your left hand is going to go on the tenor joint. So around on the tenor joint. And you'll see there's 3 holes. Boop, boop, and boop. You don't have to worry about this guy for right now. So just make sure your first finger, or index finger, is there. Second finger, or your middle finger, and your third finger, or your ring finger, is on here. And your fourth finger is just going to kind of hover over this guy, but he doesn't need to be able to press it down right this second. So that's the front end of your left hand. If you flip it over, you want your right finger, your thumb, to be on this guy right here. So you see there's this set of 4. You want it on the lowest one, and that's your whisper key. Again, that's the one that controls this guy all the way up at the top. Let's fix my seat strap really quickly here. Great. So that's left hand position. Boop, 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 boop. Awesome. Next is right hand position. Right hand position is very, very similar to the left hand position, but this time you're actually going down on the boot joint. darkened on me. There we go. You're actually going down on the boot. So, as you can see right here, there's 1, 2, only 2 holes this time. But, got a bunch of keys over here. So your first finger, take your index finger, put over this hole, second, over this hole. Your third finger is going to go on the second paddle. We call these paddles. It's going to go on the second paddle here, and your fourth finger, again, just kind of hover over these guys, right? Then, for your thumb, you'll see there's some keys over here. He's just kind of hover around these, because you're not going to use any of them right away, but you will use them eventually. Great. Awesome. So now that we've got our hand positioning the way we want it, next we're going to have to work on actually making the right embouchure and getting a good sound out of the instrument. So this is your double reed, like I showed you before. What you're going to want to do is make a face kind of like you're saying, oh, like, oh, but corners are going to be tight. You're going to have a nice tightened lip function. Great. And this might be a little bit difficult right at first. You're only going to want to put about maybe 1/3 or 2/3 of the reed in your mouth. You'll just have to kind of feel it out for yourself as you go. And this is by far the hardest part, is getting the embouchure correct. And this is pretty hard, so we'll work on that more later. Now, your reed goes right on the end of your vocal. Kind of push it in there as much as you can get it. And then when you're sitting up nice and straight and you're holding the bassoon in the right position with proper hand positioning, like so, you want to make sure you're sitting up nice and straight. I'll kind of turn this way a little bit so you can see me better. It should come right up to you, just like this. If it's not, adjust your seat strap a little bit, kind of move it around. Maybe you need to lean it over a little bit more this way and not hold it up so straight. Could be any variety of things. Also, once you get into the correct posture, adjust your reed so that it's oriented so it's flat with your lips. Otherwise, you're going to be doing weird stuff. Okay, great. So now that we've made a sound on the reed, we've assembled the instrument, we're sitting up nice and tall just like we should be. We've got our seat strap, everything's hooked in well, and we have it propped up in the exact right position. Now we can try and make a sound on the instrument itself. So what I want you to do for right now is go ahead and press that whisper key down. Remember, that's the key where your left thumb is. Go ahead and press that down and just leave your fingers off of all other holes and keys for right now. Let's go ahead and try and make our first sound. Remember the things we talked about with the embouchure? Right. It's a cool sounding instrument. It's really great. So this is what a bassoon sounds like. It's really exciting. It's very, very fun. So now what we're going to talk about just very quickly right at the end here is how to articulate on the bassoon. Articulating on the bassoon is very important. It's how you get all the notes to sound correctly. So the basic way to do this is simply say the word toe, 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 toe. Say the word toe a few times and then try doing this on the mouthpiece. Great. And then one thing we kind of didn't talk about today, but I feel like I should talk about, is breathing. It's hard. Breathing is difficult. because you're using a lot of air when you blow in this instrument. It's really big. There's a lot of length to it. So you want to make sure whenever you start playing, you take a nice, full, deep breath in. You want to fill up from the bottom to the top. So you want to feel your, almost like your stomach fill up all the way to your chest and your back. You want to feel it everywhere in your chest. Great. So today we talked about setting up the instrument. We talked about our postures, sitting the right way. We talked about our hand position, making sure our hands are in the right spot and we're all set up when we get to start playing the instrument. We talked about getting a sound with our reed, just the embouchure, not worrying about it being an instrument at all. Then we put it in the instrument and got a good sound out of it that way. And then once we've done that, we worked a little bit on articulation today. This has been the first lesson in bassoon. I'm your host, Zach, and until next time.